You're listening to the Scarecrow Runner podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Gilbert, and I'm excited that you're here to journey alongside me as we lace up the shoes and journey through life, liberty, and all things running each and every week. Now, let's head down the trails and see what's in store in this week's episode. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. I appreciate it. You guys will be the first duo that I've had, so that's kind of cool. It's a first and pretty exciting stuff. Got a lot of stuff we could cover, so
we're open.
I don't know much about you, Jeremy. I know quite a bit about Jeff just from following him pretty closely and being kind of in the same running group. Jeff, you're not under Cliff anymore, are you?
No, I am. Yeah, I am.
Okay, because it's weird because it's like so many people came in that were new and then they left, and I'm like, who's still in there? And so, okay, that's what I figured. I knew there had been some people that kind of had some attrition and lost them, but with both of us under Cliff, I'm technically under Cliff, but I haven't been under Cliff. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I've been with Cliff since March.
So I was Cliff's first. I picked him up a year ago in June, right after my second DNF, and I was like, I got to do something different. So I was like, why not? I'll take a chance on this guy. And he had never coached anybody for ultra running, and he hadn't even run any ultras himself. So that was pretty bold. And but then he coached me from. I'm one of the ones that he's talking about of getting people turned around in a very quick turnaround, because I told him, I said, dude, I want to run my 100 this year. I want to take all the training that I've done and I want to put it into something. I don't want to wait another year. And I'm glad I didn't, because then COVID would have hit and it would have screwed everything up. So yeah.
Made it hard, man. Definitely made it hard.
Absolutely. And tomorrow is a year ago that I was getting ready to go run that race, which is crazy to think it's been almost a year ago.
That's wild. Have you run anything since then?
Yeah, I've ran a few things, nothing real big. Let's see, what did we do? So 3 weeks after Pumpkin Holler, I did the Route 66 marathon, which kind of killed me. I don't advise that for anybody going off of a 100-miler and then trying to set a PR for a marathon. That trashed my legs pretty good. And then I ran. Then I did the snake run in March. There's a 3-hour and a 6-hour race here in Tulsa at Turkey Mountain, and so it was all trail. So I did the 3-hour there. Then I did another trail run, and then COVID hit, and that pretty much screwed everything for races. And then I did a bunch of virtual stuff. I did the great virtual race across Tennessee with Lazarus Lake. Making.
I did that one as well.
Yeah, that was a grind fest. I ended up running 2 back-to-back. I was thinking about going for the whole thing, but then my legs got trashed. I shut it down after I hit going all the way across. I was like, I'm not going back across right now. I don't feel like I can do it. I probably could have, but so back-to-back 250-mile months, which was that was a PR for me for 2 months. I didn't never even run 250 when I was training for my 100. So I was like, I'm not even trained for 100 and I'm rolling 250. That's crazy. And I told Cliff, I was like, I tell you, I'm not going to train for 100, and I ran my 2 highest months. So pretty crazy. And then Jeff, you ran 300 last month, right?
I did, for the month of September. Yeah.
That's crazy. And I think people run 500, 600, 700 miles a month. I don't know. I know you guys are married, and Jeff, you've got kids, right?
I do. Yeah.
And Jeremy, do you have kids?
I do. 15 and 13 now.
So it's like, I don't know how some of these people run as many miles as they do, having a family and having any kind of relationship with their wife and their kids, because
early morning, man.
Yeah. I'm not an early man. I've tried this year. I can't.
But that's how.
Yeah, I know.
So if you don't want to sacrifice your family, you have to take the sacrifice yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, like last year, I did it regardless. You get up and you grind at 5 a.m. and you do it, right? And most of my training now, and it always has been late at night. And that's kind of one of the other ways that I can't go out mostly and do 3 or 4 hours, but I can get some good mileage in the evening. And that doesn't really, my wife makes cookies and does a lot of cookie business. And so a lot of times she's decorating cookies and stuff. And so I'll
That
go out
sounds
for my run.
dangerous. That sounds real dangerous to come back to.
Sugar cookies, it's a killer. And so, it's kind of a good balance. So she's doing that, and I'm able to run, and it doesn't take away from us too much. Sometimes almost too much. It's like, you're making cookies, I'm running. What about us?
It works.
It works. So, but I've got 4. I've got my daughter's actually home this weekend. We're gonna head out on a trip tomorrow, but she's almost 19, and then 13, 10, and 6. So
I bet they're sleeping at 5 a.m.
oh, yeah, and so am I. I don't know. It's hard. If I want to get up early for a run, I cannot run the
That's
night
fun.
before.
That's the best time.
I've got to shift my focus when I'm doing the mileage, because if I do a night like a late night run like last night at 10:30, I'm not going to be able to get out of bed at 5 to go run. It's just, my body's just trash. So I got to have a turnaround, right? So I'm like, if I'm going to run early, I got to go to bed somewhat decent and then get up early. And so the plan tomorrow morning is to get up and run before our trip, because I'm not going to get a run in tomorrow or Saturday. So we'll see. So, all right, we'll go ahead and jump in here and get going, even though we've kind of already started a little bit. Thank you for joining me today on the Scarecrow Runner podcast. This is your host, Anthony Gilbert, and I have a first on the show today. I actually have 2 guests with me. They come from the Tar Heel State in Leland, North Carolina. I have Jeremy Reynolds and I have Jeff Winchester, who are also known as the Ultra Running Guys. If you find them on Instagram, they do run ultras. That is not a farce. They do run ultras, and we've got some good stuff to jump into with them today on this episode, because they're fresh off the heels of a crazy weekend last weekend, and pretty excited to talk about these guys that, well, let's just say Mother Nature had her way with them, but they still managed to have a good showing. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So as I was talking to them offline a little bit, Jeff and I have both been together under Cliff Pittman in the Fit to Endure group, and Jeremy, you're the other half of the Ultra Running Guys. And so I guess the first question I have for the 2 of you is, how long have you guys known each other? And I noticed Jeremy's looking at Jeff like, do we really want to answer that? Is how did you guys come to get to know each other?
Yes. So I'll jump in. So actually we met a little bit before, but really kind of became friends in 2013. Jeff was actually a pastor at the time, and we were in a men's small group, and I was jumping into some fitness and wellness stuff, and started a body transformation challenge and said, who wants to jump into this thing with me? And he was like the one that raised his hand. And so that kind of kicked off a friendship.
We are the odd couple.
We are the odd, yeah.
Because I'm not fit. And I'm still not fit.
That's not true. But so anyways, that's how we met. And then it kind of snowballed. And as we just got into the fitness stuff and tried some different things, it was really, I think it was late that year. And we talked about doing the Spartan race sprint early 2014. And at the time, that's before they were kind of big and well known.
Right.
And it was super scary. And we did it. And at least for me, and I think the same for Jeff, it was really, for me personally, it was recognizing that in the Spartan race, I could not run at that time, or, you know, what a poor runner I was. And, but really enjoyed it. And so that's really what lit the spark for me for running. And it kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. And I guess I got running 9 years ago for health reasons. And so I'm not sure how that relates to what time we first met and all that. I guess it was 2011. But I had high blood pressure, cholesterol, acid reflux. I had all these different characteristics saying I was going to have a stroke or a heart attack at any moment. I've never been like athletic or anything like that. And so obviously when he asked me to be in a fitness group with him, I kind of laughed because he works out. I don't. I've always had this skinny fat because I've always been thin. And so I've got the outward appearance of looking like I'm healthy, but on the inside I was dying at the time. And so getting fit was important just from a running standpoint, but also from any kind of exercise. So that's kind of where I guess why I agreed to kind of hang out with him to do it. Definitely intimidating just in general to work out. But running started a little bit before that for me, just a few years because of just the health side of it for me. And even then I couldn't run very well. And so, yeah, when we did Spartans, the first couple Spartans, literally thought I was going to die multiple times. And it was the worst experience of my life, but also the best experience because it challenged me in ways that I never thought possible. But got out of that personally because I started thinking that I'm not going to be climbing through mud for the rest of my life. And I'm a germaphobe and this is kind of really eating me. But the run side, I really, really liked. And so I started looking into the runs, and I don't know how we started looking at ultras and stuff because, I mean, I ran my first marathon in 2015. Yeah, that was my first marathon. And since then, I've done quite a few others.
I think it was really his first marathon. I agreed from an accountability standpoint to do the plan with him. So I didn't run the marathon, but
you did the training, right?
I did the training plan with him. And then that really rolled into, I ended up doing my first marathon a handful of months later. And then later that year is when we both did our first, the JFK 50. Was that your first?
Because I did my first marathon in December 2015 and my first 50K in January of 2016.
That's right.
And then my second marathon was in March of 2016. And then I did the 50 miler, same one you did in November of 2016.
Yeah. Basically, so you guys jumped right into the longer distances almost from the get-go, and it's crazy because a lot of the guests that I have, they're like that. You know, some of them would go from either a 5K and hardly nothing at all to jumping into a marathon or jumping into a 50K, and I'm like, I guess I'm just what you would call a normal runner to where I progressed, right? I didn't go from the shorter distances to I didn't go from just nothing to long because when I started running, I didn't know, I guess it was just naive because all I knew was marathon was about it, right? And of course, I've been running since, I've been running for a while. I've been actively running for probably almost 30 years. So, ever since I was 7th, 8th grade and on into college. But it was funny, Jeff, you mentioned the whole germaphobe piece on Spartans. I've done several. I've gotten 5 Tough Mudders and a couple Warrior Dashes and stuff. And it's funny you mention that because it never fails. When I've done one of those, I've gotten sick after running one. And so we call it, I forget, one of my teammates from college, we ran a few together, and then another one of my teammates and we've run several together, but we just make this joke that, you're basically sucking down all sorts of germs because one of the Tough Mudders that we did here in Oklahoma was actually on a ranch, right? And so the mud, well, let's just say it wasn't all just mud. Let's just say when you're going and you're doing your army crawl through the trenches, when you're seeing cow patties right in your face, well, you know that you're getting something other than just mud going up your nose. And
it's just an immune system boost.
Yes. And so, I used to be one that was squeamish towards mud. Like, I don't want to get muddy. And I started doing the Tough Mudders and stuff. I'm like, man, let's do this. You just jump in and go. And so that helped me when I began to run ultras, like on trails. I'm like, who cares if you get dirty? Because you're out there. If you're too worried about getting dirty, then you don't need to be out there. And I still am amazed. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it where you got these people signing up for these mud runs, and in most cases it's women. They completely bypass the obstacles and don't get muddy. And I'm like, why are you signing up for a mud run if you're not going to get muddy? That's kind of part of the prerequisite of a mud race, is to get muddy and not be clean when you're done. If you're clean, then you obviously didn't do the course.
So I don't want to give the wrong impression here. When you said I jumped really, or that I guess we both jumped. Me personally, I didn't necessarily jump straight to marathons. When I started in 2011, I couldn't run a mile. And so, I mean, without having to just stop because my heart was racing, all those types of things. And so I actually progressed through 5Ks and 10Ks
Okay.
And did a few halves as well. And then started training for the full marathon. So I was doing 5Ks and 10Ks during all the Spartan runs and racing that we had been doing. Is kind of where I was building up some of my running as well.
Okay, that's good to know.
I didn't go straight. I didn't go straight to a marathon, and because I mean, and the reason I say that is because very important to me is that I believe that a lot of people that I interact with in running, not just through ultra running, but just in general in my community here, is that it's so important for me for them just to know and to hear the progression that it didn't just happen. And yeah, I may have done 300 something miles last month, but it's taken me a long time to get here. A lot of work, and I respect anybody who's out on the street just running 1 mile at a time, because
Absolutely.
it's so freaking hard. Like 1 mile is a long way. The first mile I ever ran, I thought I was going to die, and so I just respect anybody out there just trying it, even if they're walking it, because
You're out there
it's
moving.
hard. Oh yeah. So definitely don't want to give the false impression. Did not leapfrog right into it. It took some time, and I got mad respect for anybody that's just trying to do it. It's really important for me for that.
Absolutely. I mean, I know so many that they go out there and they criticize themselves and they beat themselves up because, like, man, you know, and I'm hard on myself too for certain times where I feel like my run should have been better, but I've learned to just roll with it as training mileage. But I'm like, guys, you're out there, you're doing stuff that so many people aren't even doing. I said, you're lapping the people that are sitting in their lazy boys and on their couches. I said, if you're out there doing 1 mile, or even if you're doing a half a mile, I don't care. If you're just going out doing 1 lap around the track, I said, that's more than so many people that aren't even doing anything. And I'm like, it's a progression. You got to build up to it. You can't just do it once a week and think you're going to be able to go out and run a race, you know, in a couple of weeks. It's a progression, and you got to take time and build up to it. And they said, well, you do a really good job. And much like you, Jeff, I built up. You know, I've been running almost 30 years. I was like, I've got a lot of base mileage on these legs, and I've gone through a lot. And so my body has adapted to it. You can't just go out there and run a marathon. Well, you could, but you'd probably die or they'd have to peel you off the street because your legs are trashed. And that even happens to those that are seasoned runners. And so it's good to hear that it was actually a progression for you. And, you know, you took the right steps and joining Jeremy and wanting to get healthy, realizing, I mean, that's one of the things, Jeff, is important, is you acknowledge the fact, of course, I'm sure the doctors helped persuade you, but you acknowledge the fact that you were not healthy on the inside, and you had to make a choice. And there's so many people that don't want to make the choice because they don't want to admit to the fact that they're not healthy. Some people don't care, but you made a choice, and it turned into a healthy lifestyle for you, to where now you're able to go out and run ultras and feel better about yourself. And in the long run, you know, you're doing your body, well, can't necessarily say you're doing your body great when you're doing hundreds, but because, but you're doing your body not a disservice, but you're helping your body because you're going out there and being physically fit. So that's great to know that, you know. I'd like to ask you, how's your overall health now? I mean, you know, cholesterol and blood pressure and things like that, have those numbers stabilized for you?
Yeah, so I'm off. I guess after the first couple of years, I got off all the meds completely. I've since been put back on a cholesterol medicine because I need to raise my cholesterol. I still have genetically low HDL, and so they're trying to balance it. But my overall cholesterol number is like 160. But the issue is that my HDL number is so low that they have to create a better ratio. So I take a cholesterol medicine for that kind of stuff.
Well, I guess if you were to have any, I guess lower cholesterol would be better than high cholesterol, because I don't know. That's yeah,
No,
I've had times where my cholesterol has been low too. So fortunately, I haven't had to be put on medication. So that's good. So, and I know before we talked, both of you guys are married, and have kids. And so, you know, as we were kind of joking before we jumped on here, you know, if you really want to get the work in, you got to do it early in the morning. And as I told both of y'all, I'm a late night runner. That's why I get, if you ever see my Facebook stuff, people, I've got some friends here, they call me the Midnight Express. Well, there's a reason why they call me that, because I'm always out at night. And it's like, I'm not an early morning riser. I never have been, even though I will do it. Especially when Cliff had me do the 4x4x48. 2 o'clock in the morning, my feet were stumbling, and I'm surprised the cop that I ran past didn't pull me over for public intox, because it looked like I was drunk, because my feet were just not coordinated to run it at that time of the night or the morning. And so
your brain catches up though.
It did. After about a mile, I finally woke up, and then it's like 3 more miles and I was done. And then it's like, go back to sleep for 2 hours and get up and do it again. And so, but it was great training for mental toughness and learning how to handle a 100-miler. And so that leads me into the next piece. So I know you guys have done marathons. Jeremy, you've done what, 1-2 marathons? So
I've completed a handful of marathons. I've raced 2. First one I raced, I said, I don't ever want to do that again. Right?
That's me. That was me.
and I proceeded on to ultras. So I have raced a couple of marathons now to date, a couple 50Ks, 200 milers, and then just competed in my first 24-hour, that brutal race this past weekend that we had a good time out at. Speaking of mud races.
Yes. And Jeff, you've done what? 26 milers, 7 marathons?
Yeah, I've done 7 marathons,
750Ks, 250 milers, and 100, and then your attempt last weekend.
And then quite a few others.
So yeah, nothing but words there. To mud. You guys had plenty of it last weekend. And I guess that's one of the things I wanted to jump in and talk to both of you guys about, because that it's fresh in your minds. And you guys both went out. Jeremy, you went out to do the 24-hour challenge, 24-hour event, and Jeff, you went out to do the 100-mile race. And Jeff, you hit 52 miles respectively, and Jeremy, you hit 68 miles, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And yes. To kind of set the tone for the listeners and those that are watching, it's not because these guys don't know how to go out and run, and it wasn't like their bodies were falling apart and they just had issues.
I was getting close. but yeah, circumstantially, correct.
Circumstantially, you all went out to run this race, and then, well, let's just say a hurricane decided to blow in and dump a crap load of water and wind on you guys. And I know that the conditions were deteriorating very rapidly, and I know with the race director, they got to be cautious and such. But so I'm gonna, whoever wants to jump in and just kind of, I know Jeff, you were running a really great race. You felt really strong and were feeling good. And it was obvious that if things continued the way they were before these unknowns hit, you were definitely going to knock out that 100-miler. Just kind of take us through how you were feeling, what you were thinking, and then as things started to, I guess, deteriorate, what was going through your mind and how were you processing those things, and what were some of the challenges? I know, but I want the listeners to know what you were going through.
That's a lot. So let me back up, I guess, and say that, originally I was supposed to do the Hennepin 100 the weekend before, but it got canceled because of COVID. And so I realized that probably in September and decided to sign up for the Halloween Hobble for the 100-miler there. Jeremy had already been planning on doing the Hobble because the race he was going to do, he had some conflicts as well. He was going to do, and you can probably talk about this if you want to, but he was going to do one of the backyard races, a last man standing. And so both of us kind of like diverged into this Halloween Hobble. And it's a somewhat local race. We know the race director. He's a great guy. His name's Drew. He is somebody that we both know, and Jeremy actually is really good friends with him and his wife. And so we ended up at the Halloween Hobble, I guess last weekend. And we knew it was going to rain. They've been calling to rain. but you know, we'd never seen the course. We didn't know what it was going to be like or anything like that. And so I know that for me personally, you know, I talked to Cliff about some plans about going out a lot slower than typically I would go out in any of my other races. And, you know, I had told him my last 100 that I did finish, that I had set my best, you know, 50-mile pace in it. He said, well, you should go slower than that substantially. So I intentionally went out pretty conservative this time, and felt really good. I mean, until I got probably around mile 30, at that point, realizing I'm going way too slow because the conditions are starting to fall apart really, really quickly. And so, you know, it will be one of those things that haunts me a little bit when I look back at it, because typically I would have set out probably, you know, a certain pace faster to try to knock out some time, almost banking time, if you will,
Right.
which is not always a great strategy. Let's be honest with ourselves in ultra. It's one of those fallacies that many of us fall into, that we think we should bank time and we have enough to just die in.
Sure.
Not great. But anyway, so I had no bank to start with because I had gone a lot more conservative, and began to mentally wrestle with the fact that at around mile 30 that I had gone out so conservative and the course was now falling apart. And so I kind of got mad. I had just recently in the lap before picked up some logs or sticks in the woods to be some makeshift trekking poles, because the course was starting to get pretty muddy and pretty slick. So I tried those for like 4 miles, but my arms were getting tired. So I set out, I think it was on the start of mile 32 or something, and I just threw the sticks down and just got kind of mad at it and just started running. It was still daylight. I felt really, really good. It's probably the strongest I've felt between miles 30 and 45 of any ultra. And I mean, I felt good. I felt really good. I was having a lot of fun. I was really, really pissed, to be quite honest with you, because the weather continued to rain and the mud was just sitting and caking up. And so it got to where it was getting dark, and I realized as darkness came, my pace started hitting a crawl. Now, when I say I was going fast or during that time, you got to put it in perspective. You're still talking slick roads that are causing you to go 15-minute miles for certain parts, and that's fast because you're passing people. And that's not fast. Like, it's not fast at that point of where you are, but it is for the conditions.
Right.
Darkness hit a lot of the places. Not only could you not see them, but the mud continued for long stretches of course, to where you kind of almost like rollerbladed walk to get up the sides of the hills and stuff as you're going up them. You couldn't. There was no sides that you could avoid. You had to stay on the mud the entire time. There was no way around it. And so it got to where I couldn't run. I was spending most of my miles or 25 to 30-minute pace miles at that point just to get through them. And it begins to wear on your body, not just mentally, but on your body too, because you're carrying these 5-pound pieces of mud shoes that you're lifting in the front of my thighs. You normally think you beat your thighs up going downhill, but mine were just getting eaten alive, just lifting my legs up so many times, walking or whatever. And so I started slowing down so much at that point as I got to mile 50 and everything, or 48, I think at that point, that I was telling, Jeremy, because I saw him at our co-aid station, that I don't see how possibly, if I'm maintaining the pace I have now and where I'm at feeling okay, that I can finish this race on time, knowing that I'm going to deteriorate. Like, it's not going to just at mile 70 feel the same way I felt at mile 45. That just doesn't happen, for most of us. And so I got to the point that mathematically I thought there's no way that I'm going to be able to finish. And so either I can just continue just for kicks, or I can just call it a day. And so my brain said, let's call it a day. But it's probably, of the DNFs I've had, it has been my favorite one. I absolutely loved the course. I thought that what Drew and those folks did out at Allison Woods was a fantastic location. I thought the setup was great. I would love to run it again in different conditions. And my nutrition was on point. My hydration was on point. I had no stomach issues, no feet issues that were really bad, nothing. And so it was a good day. And an ultra is supposed to cause carnage. And this one had, I think, an 85% dropout rate for the 100-miler. And it was absolute carnage. And I loved it, like absolutely loved it. So that's my story.
Yeah.
Counting up the DNF
Definitely. I remember looking at stuff that there was carnage. I know there's one guy I follow on Facebook. He was actually, I think, one of 6 finishers, something like that. And just, I remember the update Cliff gave us, 1 of 5. And Cliff gave us, said that, you were literally having to pull your legs out of the mud every single step. And it just, mental images of that, I'm just thinking of blocks of concrete is what your legs felt like. Because, I've been in some mud like that before. Yeah, you can't go on another 45 plus miles having to do that. And so I wanted to ask you, Jeff, with the rain, I'm anticipating that it was probably a pretty heavy rain, but I mean, was it a driving rain? Was it just a soaking rain? What kind of rain was it that created such a mud fest?
I think it started raining that morning. I mean, it rained all day. It was but it wasn't. I mean, it came in bands. There were times it was heavier than others, but it was always there. It wasn't a pounding rain though. At any point, I think towards the end when you were on one of your laps, you had a pounding rain.
Yeah, it got pretty heavy. The one godsend was that there was no wind or very limited wind.
Right.
I think if there would have been wind along with it, it just, there's no way you could have kept moving. But yeah, we camped out there, and so the rain started about 2 a.m, Friday night, early Saturday, and it was only forecasted to get worse all the way through Sunday afternoon. So I mean, we knew going into it, coming from Delta, that once that mud started and we started seeing that, like, I mean, there was going to be no break point. It was just going to get worse and worse and worse. So, yeah, I just counted up. So I think 37 started the 100. And so you had 2 females and 3 males that finished. That's a big dropout rate, especially for, and it's not a super tough course. It's not super technical. If the conditions would have been different, I think it would have been a much different day.
See, and then my first attempt at 100, those were the finishing numbers that sounded like what we had is the Oklahoma Outlaw back in 2018. I think there was 50 something of us, and that was my first attempt. And it's a massively technical course. I mean, we're talking, I think my vert, I only got 55 miles in, but I think I had put in, well over 9,000 feet of elevation for that 55 miles. But much like you guys, it started raining and we had cliffs, right? Cliffs and rocks, and it's raining, and I was getting to the point where I was averaging a mile an hour. And man, I tell you, it really starts to wear on you mentally, because I'd only been trained enough to maybe, if I was lucky on a good day, I would have finished that race. But with rain and darkness and rocks and cliffs and whatever else, I mean, rocks upon rocks upon rocks, because it was more of hiking conditions rather than a running trail. Going 1 mile an hour, and I'm like, and this was at the 22nd hour, I was like, I'm going to be out here for 2 days. There's no way. There is no way that I could go out here and finish this. I'm not ready for a multi-day event like that. And so the rain definitely messed with us, and there's creeks. And so the creeks start to rise, and the creek crossings where you saw earlier in the day where you're supposed to go across, it's different when you go across it on the next lap. It's like, where do I cross? Things changed. And so, yeah, the mud definitely, I'm sure that wore you guys smooth out. And so, Jeremy, you were doing the 24-hour event. So were you guys running the exact same course, or is there variations, or is it was the same?
Yes. So the way it was set up is a 4-mile loop. And so you had multiple events. So it's actually, like Jeff said, it's a great event. And so there's actually a 4-mile race. And so you have people that are out there. So as the 24-hour, we started at the same time with the 4-mile race. So I said, man, if you can't tell within the first 10 seconds who's in what group, and then somebody's going to burn out quick. But so you had a 4-mile race, and then there was a 6-hour event, 12-hour event, 24-hour event, and 100-mile, all on the same 4-mile course. And they did a staggered start. But the great thing is you saw people all day going at different paces. So that was really cool. And like I said, the course, I think it had 330, 340 feet of vert per loop. I think it was about 9,000 for the 100 something. So not insane, just a good course. But I'll tell you, so Jeff and I were out on the last lap. For me, the big thing, and I'll preface it with this, every ultra I've ever done has had terrible weather. And our families joke, because the first year we did JFK, there was sleet and 40-mile-an-hour winds. And then the next year it rained. We did Umstead in 2018. It snowed in Raleigh. That doesn't happen. It rained all day and snowed. So we're used to terrible weather. But this is the first race, and I actually had just written a blog about, I call it my monster, and watching people, wrestle with their monster. And I had quite the experience at the Yeti 100 last year. But this is the first race where I've had the struggle of really wanting to quit. I hadn't come to that point in a race before. And so I was just struggling mentally with that, just mainly because all my goals had changed with the mud. And I just thinking, man, my legs were shot. You know, how am I going to do this for another 10 hours or whatever? And so we were just under 15 hours. And there's a woman that was running it. I don't know if you know the name Liz Bauer.
Yeah, Liz was at the same race that, well, she ran in a race that I was in last year and a half ago. She is well known.
And yeah, from what I understand, she holds the record for most hundreds in a calendar year or something similar. But anyways, we were in Jeff's last loop, and we were walking, and I mean, it was absolutely terrible. And I'm thinking, how am I going to make it another 10 hours, you know, slogging through this? And she's moving quicker than us, and she comes by us and she says, have you heard if they're going to extend the 30 hours because of the course? And for me to wrap my head around the fact that not only she, you know, I'm sitting here going, I don't know how I'm going to make it for 10 hours. She's thinking, well, I'm going to do this. And I don't think 16 hours is enough. I'm hoping that they extend this. That was such a huge lesson for me in mindset, and to realize that, like, I needed some tweaking personally, you know, but.
Yeah, she said that. I pretty much buried me. I was like, all right, we're done. You have just
and she was one of the finishers. She finished with 30 minutes left, I think, 29:29.
That does not surprise me. Yeah, she's a beast. She was at the Boonville Back Roads 100 that we did up in Boonville, Iowa, and it was like 80 degrees, 80% humidity, ridiculous. This is when we had all the flooding in the Midwest last year. They had to change the course the night before, and talk about mud. Yeah, we had roads that were literally washing out on the course because of so much water coming off the river. And yeah, she was one of the ones that grinded through it. And I tapped out at 63 miles. I said, I can't do anymore. And, so you did 68 miles, Jeremy. That's a pretty long haul, even in the conditions that you were running in. And I mean, how many miles did you go through feeling like you couldn't go anymore? I mean, because I know, was it from the beginning, or was it just?
No. So I started working with the coach in April, and like Jeff said, my target for the year was a backyard ultra.
Right.
And so I've been putting in a lot of mileage, you know, compared to years past. You know, last year was my high year mileage at 1,700, and I think I hit that in June or July of this year. I just passed 2,500 for the year, which for me is like way up there compared to, you know, historical. So that's really what I had been training for. So I went into this race with a stretch goal for myself at the 24 hours. The course record's 104. I knew I wanted to beat that, and my stretch goal was 120.
Hey.
Yeah.
But you won this.
What's that?
You did get
I did. So to be honest, the first 30 miles, I felt great, and that's really what, you know, but it started to deteriorate. I hit 40 miles at 8 hours, which was, you know, 120-mile pace, but it was already declining. So I knew, okay, that's off the table. But if I can at least maintain, maybe I can, you know, at least get over the 100 or set a course record. But to give you some perspective, I hit 40 miles at 8 hours, and then, you know, the next 12 hours, because I ended up stopping just before 20 hours. So it took me almost 12 hours to get the other 28 miles. It really just became a slog, and I ended up with trekking poles that somebody had offered Jeff. All my stabilizers were shot just because of slipping and sliding. I was also running, you're not in the Escalantes, right? I was running in the Ultra Escalantes, which are, you know, road shoes, which I love for trails, but man, they got nothing when it comes to mud. So
No,
I just had
not at all.
But bottom line is, you know, I was proud of the effort. And when I got to the end, actually in the last lap, I hit the turnaround, and the volunteers told me, I think you're the only 24-hour, you know, runner still out here. You may want to check. And like I said, we had camped, and by that time, I mean, everything was wet. The ground had a half-inch essentially of just slop. My family's miserable. So my wife met me back at the finish line, And I was mentally trying to talk myself into going for another loop. And she said, "Hey, you've won. You know, you're the last one out here. You can pull the plug right now. You're 16 miles ahead." So that it didn't take too much at that point to talk me into saying, "Okay, you know, hey, let's call it a day." So to me, that's still a gap. I went out there to do 24 hours and I didn't do it. But I think it would have been selfish to keep them in the conditions longer, just so that I could do that, especially when all the other boxes have been checked.
Yeah.
So proud of the effort. So my coach, Mark Bottenhorn, you know, I kind of told him afterwards, he was stoked because I won, you know, but obviously a different outcome than I think we were both hoping going in. But it was good. I mean, overall, I think it was an absolute win. And for me, just kind of the minefield mentally that I had to walk through, that was a new great experience. And going into, I'm doing a last man standing now in January and then the backyard in May. And I think this race is really going to help with some of the mental aspects.
I wouldn't disagree on that. I mean, in my DNFs that I've had, I learned huge amounts of, I mean, just a lot of information and a lot of self-reflection. I know you guys have, you know, you're a week into finishing that last weekend, and you know there's probably still plenty of self-reflection and stuff going forward, but I know it's a learning opportunity. And I'm not sure about you guys, but I know my experience is you learn more from a DNF than you do from a finish in most instances, because you look at the challenges, you look at the personal struggle like you dealt with, Jeremy, on wanting to quit and still pushing through and getting miles. And you know, with the conditions that you guys were facing, I mean, you can't really beat yourself up too much, because I mean, it was brutal, right? It was a complete an utter mess. There was carnage everywhere, and of course, you know, some race directors are a little sadistic and they think that's awesome because they're like, man, people are dropping like flies. This is great. But then it's like, then you also want people to finish, right? Because you want it to look like a good event. And we, you know, with the Outlaw, we ran into that because we only had 5 people finish the entire race, and he extended, the race director, it was a first year race, and he extended it, the cutoff time by like, I don't remember. I think it was like another 20 hours or something like that. It was some ridiculous number. I was like, what, they can do that? They can extend the time, the cutoff? Well, if I would have known that, I would have gone back to my bunk and I would have slept for a few more hours and got some sleep and then tried it again. But I don't think I would have been able to get out of the bunk and run. I was pretty trashed. So going forward, the experiences that you guys have learned, do you feel like this opportunity that you guys had last weekend at the Halloween Hobble, do you feel that it's going to be one that's going to help you guys more in your next races versus your previous ultras that you've ran? Do you think you're going to learn more from this, or is it just another piece in the puzzle?
So I think for me, it probably solidified some of the things like I'm doing in training that I've been doing. You know, like I said earlier, I've had multiple DNFs, and I try to continue to learn from each of them. And so I've put things in place from every single time that something's gone wrong, right? And so this really just affirmed a lot of the things that I have in place already. And so for me, it was more of a confidence booster in that I've got the legs underneath me. I've got the framework of the nutrition, hydration, the things I need to be focusing on. I've got good planning going on in those as well. And so I don't see it as a negative in any stretch. You know, some of the other DNFs I've had really wrecked me, whether or not I wanted to quit running or something like that. This is complete opposite. I don't see it as anything but just a step on the long-term goal of getting to where I want to be. So, yeah, it was good.
What about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think for me, like I said, I think the mental aspects, I think it was super important for me to work through some of that. And I'll be able to reach back and look. And I had that conversation as we were out there is, hey, you know, kind of my rule for myself when I do the backyard is just line up every time. And I got to the point where I'm thinking, okay, I don't really even want to do another lap here. But that's not kind of the promise that I made to myself. So it's good to work through that, to know that I can continue to do it. I think also one thing that was great, these events, all of them really, but Hobble was great in terms of just meeting new people, seeing all different kinds of people from the different events. And one of the things that we're, really focused on with the ultra running guys is just trying to create community, get to know people, figure out how we can help build, the ultra community. And I think now, especially because it's so fast growing, but it used to just be this thing that was out there that like only the freaks did, and I think now they're saying 100 is the new marathon, 200 is the new 100. It's just becoming more, I don't know what you call it.
The
People are
freaks
more
still do
open.
it.
Well, yeah, it's true, but
Mainstream. It's more mainstream.
Yeah.
It's more accepted, right? I think people's minds have opened to the fact that it may be possible for them. And so I think it's such a good time for just being able to support that, whether it's putting on events, whether it's just networking, kind of nurturing those, telling people that, hey, if we can do it, you can do it. And
Education, right? It's
yeah.
a lot of people
Well,
like you don't even know what an ultra is, right? There's a lot of people that are still uneducated if even knowing what's out there.
And you show up at an ultra event, and I mean, you show up at a 5K, and there's the competitors, and what they look like, and who's trying to win. You show up at an ultra,
You don't
and
know.
it's everybody and anybody, and it doesn't matter, and people are just out there to have a good time together. So I think if people join that community, it's going to be a good thing.
Community is the key word there, Jeremy, because it's like, I know in every ultra race I've ever been in, it's all about community. It's like a big family. You're out there to have a good time, support each other, making sure hopefully everyone can finish, and you want to make sure that everyone can have a successful opportunity, right? You don't want to see anybody, I mean, honestly, you don't want to see people in carnage, right? Just laying all over the place and not able to move, but I mean, it happens.
Yeah,
Jeff is like, suck it. He's like,
it's hard. No, I mean, I think it's hard. And I think that's why the people do it, is that they don't want it to be easy. I just don't think they want it to be easy. I think when you're doing ultras, everybody expects it to be hard to some degree. And, the difference between him and I is that he's the fast one, I'm the slow one. And there's a party in the back. I mean, we just hang out back there, and sometimes we're just trying to get through, and it does suck, and it is hard, and people are struggling. But up at front, they're struggling too. They just struggle differently, and it's not like they're not hurting. We're all hurting.
absolutely.
I think that's the part that we have a shared experience of the discomfort, and I think that's what brings us together.
It's like just this last week, with Moab 240, and David wasn't able to finish, and he went with a valiant effort. And then you got David Goggins, who goes out on no sleep, just ridiculous, dealing with pain. I mean, he dealt with injury along the way, but I've learned and I've seen that so many people have mad respect for the people in the back, because it's the people that are in the back that are out there, chasing the cutoffs, out there grinding for many, many, many hours, and they're out there in the conditions longer than the elite runners. The elite runners are gonna struggle, they're gonna have pain, and they're gonna have stuff, and they deal with it differently, and they oftentimes don't show it. But it's the ones that are out there gritting it that aren't your traditional runners. They don't have the runner body. They might be short and squatty and have hobbit-like legs, or they could be like myself, where I'm more of a basketball frame to where I'm tall, and I don't look like an ultra runner. But you've got all these different people going out there, and they're putting forth an effort, and they're grinding, and it's like, man, you just have nothing but respect for people that go out there and at least toe the line and try. I mean, if they're not, like you said, they want it to be hard, because if it was easy, everybody would do it, and then it wouldn't have the allure that it has of someone like Brandon Kreitz, who went out and crushed his first 100-miler last year, Jeff. Ridiculous time, and he was talking about wanting to run another 100 and being very quick, and now he's changed his whole tune, where he's like, you know what, I want to shoot for a 200-miler now, and I'm like, what about the 100 and going out and trying to break a 14-hour? And he's like, no, I want to go out and do a 200-miler. I'm like, okay, more power to you, brother. So it's like you said, some people might think the 100-miler is the new marathon, because so many people are starting to get into the circle and doing the hundreds, that what's next, what's out there to challenge the body. And with the multi-day events like the Moab 240 and, you know, the Trans Rocky races and things of that nature. I don't know. I'm not quite to that point where I want to go out and try to run a 200 miler. I'm happy just to go out and even get a 100 miler done. I mean, yeah, it's not easy and it's a grind. And the body hurts.
I think though the big point of that, and that's why I probably prefer ultras than racing marathons, is because the limit of the human capability and what, you know, there's only so much faster that I'm going to get, and I think it's going to be, you know, diminishing returns there. But in terms of distance, you know, people are proving. I really think that that's where Laz in the backyard and some of that stuff is starting to just break some barriers, because then he's taken the speed completely out of it and just said, let's see how far we can actually go. And so I know for me, I would probably be more, and I'm not there yet either, but I would probably be, you know, more apt to try a 200 than to say, hey, let me spend the next year of my life trying to absolutely run the fastest 100 that I could. Just because it's a different game. It's a different mental piece, I think.
Yeah, I agree, because that's the same for me. It's like, you know, I know that I probably will never be able to qualify for Boston. I mean, I've got some speed, but I just don't have enough speed to get me to that barrier to get that. But I know that I can go out and I can finish 100. And you don't have to run fast for 100. You just got to make sure that you're moving, right? You don't have to go out and crush it. It's a whole different context. You know, when you're going out and running the marathons, most of the people, you're trying to run it as fast as you can. I'm not going to be an elite runner, and people aren't going to bash you if you run a 29-hour 100 or if you run a 14-hour 100. It doesn't matter, because 100 is 100, and you know it's a lot different. It's a higher level of respect versus, you know, a half marathon or a marathon distance where they're like, well, what'd you run? And some people might, I ran a 7-hour marathon. Well, you might get some eye rolls from people because they're like, well, you're dog slow. But nobody's going to really do that when you say, yeah, I ran a 100 miler. They're like, you ran a what?
Right.
So Jeff, what's one thing for you that keeps you going and wanting to push yourself with the ultras? Because I know you've got something coming up. It's the Killer Creek.
Yeah, on Halloween.
Are you doing the 50K or the 25K?
50K.
Okay, so you got the 50K. So what's one of the things that keeps pushing you to keep doing the ultras? I know, you know, you've pushed yourself, you've challenged yourself, you've got a 100-mile finish, and you tried to get another one last weekend. What's your why to keep you pushing for more?
Oh my gosh, my why. That's so coach sounding.
Well, you know, we've learned from a really good one.
Yeah, but he doesn't ever like my answers. So
well, that doesn't surprise me either, Cliff. I know you're listening, so
no, I mean, it changes. I mean, it really just changes really what's going on. I think big picture, what's driving me more than anything is, I mean, ultimately my ultimate goal is to qualify for Western States. Long-term plan, no matter what you say, is I would like to be able to get there and to qualify for it. And I know personally that to get there, I've got to finish hundreds, I've got to finish qualifying hundreds, I've got to get better at running ultras. And so everything along the way is really just the steps I need to take to get me to that ultimate goal. And so what it shows me from a relational standpoint with like my kids, my family, you know, my wife, friends, and everybody, is that ultimately is that you can have a goal in life and you can fail along the way, but it doesn't have to change ultimately what you're striving for. And so, you know, I don't sweat a DNF like as a failure in what I'm trying to do in my life. I see it as a failure in that moment. I see it as something I need to learn from and to grow from, but I don't see it as something that's going to get in the way of ultimately what I'm trying to strive for. So what I hope for my kids and my wife, like I said, and even friends, is that they see that you can shoot for something and you're okay failing. Like, it's going to be okay. And that if you want to be successful, you got to be really comfortable learning from your failures. And if you don't get comfortable with that, you're not really going to get things that you want to have. And so for me, I want to get to Western States. And so I signed up for a 50K that's coming up in a couple of weeks because I'm still running. Like, yes, I played in the mud for a few hours, and now I'm back to the next thing. And so, you know, I've got a 50K in October. I'll have a 50K in December. I've got a 50K, or I'm not sure if I'm doing a 50 miler for Southern Ultra. I haven't decided. In January, sorry, just dialogue here on that. And then, I've got a marathon in February and a 50K in March already that I'm looking at. So, I've showed that to Cliff, and he's thinking it's insane because there's not time for all the different phases of a training plan, but it is what it is, and so this is where I'm at in my training and what I like to do.
Yeah, and I know, having the same conversations with Cliff, and I've got mad respect for him, but, I've also had some of those disagreements. I was like, look, and it's kind of the same mentality and attitude I had, Jeff, when I was wanting to run my 100 after 2 straight DNFs, is I wanted to get it done because I didn't want to wait any longer, right? Because you get that hunger and that drive and that desire to finish something that you've started. And I was like, I don't want to spend a whole nother year trying to train for something. I was like, I know I can do it. Just give me some tools and some, mental training, whatever it needs to do to help me, guide me, coach me to get to that goal so that I can get the monkey off my back and get that done. And yeah, we had some great conversations to where he didn't always agree with things, but it was a good relationship to where I pushed him and he pushed me. And I'm sure that you guys will have some good dialogue going forward on, he might not completely agree with your game plan, but it's what you're wanting to do. It's your kind of the push that you have for the next year and beyond is you've got a goal. And that's one of your whys is you want to get to Western States and qualify for that. And on the flip side, Jeremy, what's one of the things that kind of drives you to keep pushing? Because as you said, you probably feel that the speed side is going to start to deplete and you're going to have to start going slower and take after Jeff a little bit more.
I don't want Jeff to catch me. That's all it comes down to.
Just stay ahead of him, right? As long as there's not a cougar involved.
So I'll be honest, kind of where I'm at mentally. My first 100, 2018 Umstead, I went through a period after that, after attaining that goal, where I didn't want to train anymore. I couldn't get myself to wake up in the morning. I went through this huge dip where motivation was essentially gone. And so after dissecting that, I kind of realized that to me, the goals aren't near as important as just trying to be that person. Like I don't want to run ultras because I want necessarily to do the backyard or to do the next thing. Now I do, like I have milestones. And I'm the same way. I want to get to Western States. I want to get into a golden ticket race for bigs. But ultimately, what's important to me is just to go, hey, I run because I'm a runner or because I'm healthy or it's just who I am. I wake up in the morning not because I have a race coming up, but because that's who I want to be. I want that to be ingrained in me. And for me, I guess the deeper piece of that is to set an example for my kids. And if I'm going to tell them, hey, you can be the type of person you want to be, you're going to have to take on some traits and you're going to have to do the work. I think my daughter really responds to that really well. She enjoys coming out to the races. My son's got different interests, which is absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I guess that's my answer. I enjoy the getting up. Let me say that different. I don't enjoy getting up. I enjoy the process of becoming consistent as that person that runs and strives for whatever's next, versus the mistake that I think I made with Umstead, where I made it the thing. I kind of made it a finish line, and when I got across it, I really, really struggled for a while to kind of regroup and figure out what was next. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of felt the same way after, and to be honest, I even shared this with Cliff, was before I had even ran Pumpkin Holler last year, I had already made up my mind is once I'm done with this 100, I'm done. I don't want to run any more ultras. I want to shut it down and I want to do shorter distances again. And because I just felt like my body was tired and I was burned out, and I felt like kind of like you did, Jeremy, where it's like I'd made it a thing. And that wasn't the whole process. There was more to it. And, I was in the middle of the race. I'm like, once I get done with this race, I am done. I'm shutting it down. That didn't last very long. I took about 2 weeks and just kind of decompressed and took some time to reevaluate and reprocess things. And yeah, I started training for the shorter distances, but that passion, and like you said, Jeremy, I'm a runner. This is who I am. This is what I do kind of mentality. I've always been a runner. And so you can't take that out of me. It's ingrained in my DNA. I've been a runner since birth, basically. I needed some time. And I guess the important thing for ultra runners is we've just got, it's not a sprint to the finish, right? It's a grind. It might be a slow grind. It might be trumping through the mud. It might be, feeling good or feeling like complete crap. But ultimately, as you both probably can associate with, is ultras, as I like to say, is very similar as a parallel in life that we deal with. You don't know what's going to happen around the next corner. You don't know how your body's going to respond. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow when you go to work or when you go to the store. We don't know what tomorrow holds. I mean, we're not promised tomorrow, so we take advantage of the opportunity that we have, the ability to still to move forward, right? And so you guys have your whys, you have your ability, you know what you want to do, and you have those goals, and that's important. So I commend you guys for that, because at least you guys have the mindset that you need to have as an ultra runner, and that's just to keep running. And whether it's 300 miles in a month, or it's 150 miles in a month, or it's getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to put in the miles, it's not that you want to get up early like that, Jeremy, but it's because you have goals and you want to set an example. And you also, it's important, like you mentioned, you're wanting to set an example for your kids, and to impart into them something, and to pass the torch to them. Even though your son's not interested in running and doing that stuff right now, he might be when he's an adult, right? You don't know, but you're imparting something into him and showing them what it takes to get stuff done. You got to put in hard work. It kind of reminds me of my 10-year-old gave me a lot of crap when I was my first 2 DNFs. He told me before the third one, he's like, Dad, you don't finish these things. He's like, I don't know if you can finish the third one. But when I was getting ready to come down the finish line and I saw him standing there and he was giving me a fist bump in the air, he knew that I used that as fuel and motivation to show him, I show you, buddy, I can do it, and I will do it, and I'm going to keep doing it. And you just encouraged me and motivated me. I used your negativity to give me a positive. And so they're just like to give me a hard time. They know that I'm going to go out there and do it anyways. So, but guys, I really appreciate you jumping on with me. I could talk all night on running, and I'm sure you guys could too. I know it's a little later for you guys. So, and you probably got to get up in the morning and go for a run, Jeremy.
Yeah, I am.
We gotta cut
First run
this.
since the race.
How's your legs feeling? That's the last question I want to ask you guys. How are your legs feeling?
Mine are getting there. I think I'll feel better tomorrow.
So yeah, I wasn't supposed to run the past couple of days, but I ran yesterday and today. I just haven't loaded my times yet because I don't want Cliff to say anything about it.
This won't air for a couple weeks, so you're safe.
Okay. No, but so yeah, the legs are good. And all defensive Cliff real quick, because I'm sure he's going to be thinking, dang, does he not like me? If it wasn't for Cliff, I would not have put the mileage I've put in over the past 6 months. And he has really helped me do that. And I know Jeremy's grown a lot with his coach as well. And I think just the opportunities we've had to kind of grow from them and learn from them is even kind of why we do the whole ultra running guys thing that we're doing. It's just important for us to kind of learn from other people and also to share what we know. And so we use that social media, we use the blog that we have intentionally for that. It's anything that we can kind of just impart on other people from our experiences. Really, maybe they can learn from us. Like you're doing these podcasts, maybe people are learning from your guest as well. We do the same kind of thing through the URG that we're trying to put together. And so, the coaches have helped us do that because we've learned from them, and we're just trying to kind of share with each other.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, the ultra running guys just kind of started as hey, let's throw a blog together and start, just have some fun with it. But I think we're getting to a point where we can really turn it into something, and we're starting to get just some good connections. And so if you're listening, if there's anything that we can do for anybody that's listening in terms of the ultra running community, reaching out, making connections, any of that. I know you said it before, but it's the ultra running guys, _ultra running _guys on Instagram. But I have really been inspired by how many people have just reached out directly. could be questions about shoes, could be questions about, you know, running. Sometimes it's just
Time
about
management.
I
I get asked it all the time.
time management. How do you, like you said, how do you run so many miles? So you get up early. But to that point, if there's anything we can do for anybody, and we're really going to be, I think, expanding that. So we're looking forward to it. And I do appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast as well.
Absolutely. Just like you guys, I mean, and I'll just piggyback on what you guys just said is, you know, it's education and making people aware of what's out there, and to ensure that there is a community to where people feel like they can reach out, right? Because so many ultra runners and even the elite runners oftentimes, you know, not to knock on them, but there's some that they won't spend the time, but it's the blue collar guys, it's the guys that are the everyday run of the mill that are out there to where you can make yourself accessible, helps people. And I know I've gotten a lot of interaction, just like you said, Jeff, with time management. How do you do these things? What can I help you with? And it's amazing to see how people have grown and that they start to gravitate. And yeah, what you guys are doing is making a difference. I know what I've done with the podcast has made a difference because I've gotten input from it. And so that's just helps fuel you to know that you're doing a good job and to keep on keeping on. And so I want to thank you guys for agreeing to jump on here. It was a pleasure to talk with you, Jeremy and Jeff. Absolutely, we'll continue to follow you guys in your endeavors and look forward to seeing what you guys have coming down with the backyard ultras and your goals. That it's encouraging to watch you guys go out there and set those goals and conquer them. So I look forward to that. And so with that, guys, I'll see you down the trail. It's with the ultra runner guys, Jeremy Reynolds, Jeff Winchester from North Carolina. Appreciate you guys being on with me tonight, and you all take care.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
You've been listening to the Scarecrow Runner podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you'll join me next week as we journey down the trail for more adventures. Until then, have a blessed week. This is the Scarecrow Runner signing out.